Lindsay Gottlieb has done it again. We're here to talk all about USC. Locked On Women's Basketball starts now.
Ogunbowale for the win. Good!
You are Locked On Women's Basketball, your daily podcast on women's basketball.
Well, hi, everyone, and welcome to Locked On Women's Basketball. I'm your host, Howard Megdal, and I want to thank you for making us your first listen every day. Over 180,000 of you came through for us in February alone, the way we came through for you 6 days a week. And of course, it is not just me. It is the incredible team across the country over at thenexthoops.com, where we cover over 100 reported women's basketball pieces every single month. Make sure you subscribe. $9 a month, $72 a year. Get every one of them sent to your inbox, thenexthoops.com. And we've had quite a bit about USC. Lindsay Gottlieb, who I would say, Coach, you break the curve for other coaches. You talk to people about how long it takes to build a program. And so I'm just going to lay it out so people understand how much of a problem you're creating for other coaches who say, oh, it's going to take 3 to 4 to 5 years. You go to UCSB, you make the tournament your first year, you go to Cal, you make the Final Four your second year. And here we are coming off of a tournament last season. Now you have the opportunity to potentially host, depending on how it all lays out. Do you get angry letters, complaints from other coaches around the country?
I do not. But first, Howard, thanks for having me. If we're going to talk about breaking the curve, I do need to just shout out you and your team at the Next. Having been in women's basketball for a long time, you know, that you guys have shifted the narrative in terms of coverage. We all want more eyeballs on the sport. We all want more coverage, but it has to be done by people who know what they're talking about, people who are invested, people who do it the right way. And what you guys have done is really unprecedented. It has changed the game for all of us. I read a lot of the articles on things that might not get covered otherwise. And I just want to give a shout out to you guys in terms of really shifting paradigms there. As for us, no, I don't get angry letters. I would say it's more a function of, in my career, taking good jobs, setting up the right kind of systems to help players and coaches be successful, and then doing it with administrative support. And, it's a team effort when you kind of shift an entire program where you get where you want to go, and it takes administration, it takes the player buy-in, and it takes a whole staff. So we've been fortunate at those stops you mentioned. And right now at USC, we think we're just at the beginning of something really big.
Well, that's before we even get into the idea that you have a recruiting class coming in that is going to be absolutely massive. So obviously you can see the trajectory. It's delightful to see. I appreciate the kind words as well. It's been obviously a privilege to cover you for a long time, and I look forward to doing it for a long time to come. But let's talk right now about this moment. And USC coming into the Pac-12 tournament, you guys are 23-5. You do essentially everything well. You do everything in a way that you need to do it if you're going to make an extended run. You have experience, you have youth, you have managed to blend this team together. I want to start not with JuJu Watkins, although we're going to get to her. She's somewhat important. But we want to talk about the trio of Ivy League transfers you had. And the great Jen Hatfield did a story about this before we even got there. As somebody who has gone from the Ivy League out west yourself, obviously you know a little something about this trip. Why 3 players like this, and how vital has it been to have that type of experience for your team this season?
Yeah, I mean, I think thankfully now they're getting, some attention and how important they've been for us. But, throwing it back, Howard, they weren't on many people's, transfer radars in terms of high rankings. We were picked 6th in the preseason. They didn't have a lot of individual accolades, and they haven't cared about that, which has made them successful. But I just need to say, now it's really evident what a critical piece they've been, but people didn't necessarily see this coming. For me, we went into, talk about building programs a little faster, obviously in this era to do things quicker. The transfer portal really is, a vehicle to do that. For us, after year one, we knew we needed to shift a lot of things quickly. And so in my second year, we went to the transfer portal quite heavily, and we relied a lot on grad transfers, which means they were only going to be here for 1 year. We had a remarkable class. Kadi Sissoko went on to be a WNBA draft pick, Destiny Littleton, Okako Adika. We had a number of grad transfers, which means they were here for a year. They really helped shift things, but we had to go to the portal again to kind of supplement what we had. So obviously we knew we had JuJu coming in. We knew we had some returning talent with Rhea Marshall, and our other returning players, but we wanted to go to the portal to get people that could contribute immediately, that fit our needs positionally. Obviously we're good players and good people. And so I didn't go in and say, let's go get a trio of Ivy League players. I went in and said, let's find the best, transfers for us. I was probably more hyper aware of the Ivy League. I mean, I really have watched games, obviously, for years. I knew Mackenzie Forbes because I coached her. I had watched Kayla Padilla in high school, and got in too late to recruit her to Cal. She was already committed to Penn. But then when I went to the NBA, I just followed and watched, and she was like crushing the Ivy League from her freshman year on. So I was probably more aware of those two. Caitlin Davis came on to me late because Columbia has really, obviously made this incredible rise. So I'm watching them throughout the year. You obviously know they're in the portal earlier because they can't stay at their previous institutions. There was something unique about their recruiting process because their coaches that they're leaving are allies for them. They're great to talk to. So as we researched a ton of grad transfers, we felt like these three individually met our needs for what we wanted. And we went after them each individually, and it just kind of came out that they were, the three who decided to come, and it's worked out incredibly well for us.
I mean, it's a delightful thing for me, and I speak on this program all the time. You talked about Columbia, and Megan Griffith, of course, has been on the show several times. We've had Carla Berube here, talking about the quality level is so significant. People, I think, don't fully realize it yet. And now we're seeing it even more. There are no easy wins in that league. There are not easy wins in that league, even at the bottom of the Ivy League at this point. For you, as somebody who went to Brown yourself and played there, is there a level of personal satisfaction in seeing the way in which the Ivy is kind of integrated into the larger picture of women's college basketball now?
Oh, 1,000%. I mean, when I was there, Harvard was really, Harvard had Allison Feaster, who was, an incredible player. They went on, obviously, and beat Stanford in the NCAA tournament. So there was a tension there. But now I think the depth of the league, the strength at the top is really, really good, right? I mean, Princeton won a game in the NCAA tournament last year. They've been in the top 25. But, Columbia is a legit at-large team. And obviously Penn and Harvard have been. But like you said, the middle, we talked about this before we went on air. Our Brown Bears have gotten a lot better. And so the middle and the bottom is better, and the top is really elite. And I just was really aware of that. I think now some of these grad transfers being on big stages probably shines a light on that league in a certain way, but they've been deserving for several years now in the quality of play.
You talked about making the decision to go to the transfer portal a couple of years in a row. Something that I have long admired about your career is an ability to shift and figure out trends and get ahead of those trends, based on this experience. And Mackenzie specifically, is somebody who you've actually utilized her differently than she was being used at Harvard. She now being such a, primary, secondary playmaker, depending on how you want to define it. It's so interesting to me that you're sort of utilizing her in a new way. Are you thinking that this is going to be just part of the mix going forward for you when you think about how your teams are built?
For sure. Coming back to college basketball from the NBA, there were some people, the people in the NBA were like, oh, it's a no-brainer. You got to go. It's USC, women's basketball. But people within college who are a little bit more, weathered or something, or like, are you sure you want to come back to college? Now there's going to be NIL and the transfer portal, and there's all this player autonomy. And I'm like, this is how it should have always been in terms of player autonomy, right? And players getting, to capitalize on their name, image, and likeness. Like none of the newness scares me at all. None of the shifting landscape. I guess I'm more wired that way. So no question, Howard, I think one of the things that's exciting for me about this is figuring out the trends, finding out how to be good within the new landscape versus saying, well, this is how we've done it for 30 years. That's the only way I'm comfortable. So certainly I've been more comfortable with it. How you build, I think, is there's not one right way. And I'm not trying to be a GM every offseason and go build a new team. I think to rebuild, we had to do that. Obviously, the idea is to be able to create one of the elite programs in women's college basketball that incoming freshmen want to come to, that it's not just about getting, the 15 best players you can. It's about building a team and stacking the right kind of people year after year and who fits, and then going to the transfer portal maybe to supplement, which I think is what we did this offseason. It just was, we were heavier there because of numbers that we needed. But I think to me, the secret sauce is in finding that balance. And, if you can get freshmen, obviously, that are capable of contributing right away, of getting people who want to be here if they're not going to necessarily get all the minutes right away and build into something. And then obviously supplementing with transfers. Like it's trying to create, the best chemistry and the best team that you can put together. And this past season, it was obviously with the Ivy transfers, and, all three of them, you mentioned Mackenzie, all three of them are in different roles per se than what they had at their previous institution, but not less significant. And it's on this gigantic stage, and they've been an absolute joy. They're mature, they're hoopers, they really want to win, they can make big plays, and yet they're kind of over themselves in terms of understanding that it's the team first, and they've been great mentors, say, to JuJu and some of our other young players as well.
It is not surprising. Kayla Padilla missed very much at Penn, and Caitlin Davis, of course, north of 62% from two-point range for you guys, hyper efficient coming out of that Columbia team. But you're right. Listen, bottom line is it's only a half-hour show, so I can't list all your top 100 players who are coming in next year. But we're going to talk a little bit about the future as well. Next up, though, the present. Very, very interesting. Back right after this, you are listening to Locked On Women's Basketball. Locked On Women's Basketball is brought to you by eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience are what bring home the winning trophy. Also what keeps your car alive. I don't know anything about cars, but thank goodness eBay Motors does. So they have everything: superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights. Whatever you're into, eBay Motors has got your car covered. There are over 122 million parts for your ride or die. So you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. They've got this little green check mark with eBay Guaranteed Fit. So your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time, or your money back. With all the parts you need at all the prices you want, it is easy to turn your car into an MVP and bring home that win. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit, only available to U.S. customers. So we talked a little bit about, the incoming class that you have coming next year, but there's a freshman, and she's kind of flying under the radar. People aren't really talking about her, but, let's give her a little bit of shine, right? JuJu Watkins, who is, I don't even know where to start when you talk about her. When you talk about the fact that obviously the scoring is elite, up near 28 points per game. The fact that she doesn't seem to force shots in a way that you typically expect from a freshman. The fact that you go by her stocks, her steals and blocks, and her percentage is up around 8.6%, combining those two things. Again, as a freshman, you obviously knew the player you were getting. You knew that she was going to be an impact. In what way has she surprised you with what she has been able to do for you guys as a freshman?
Yeah, you listed some of the things that kind of just go beyond the initial, eye-popping scoring numbers. I think the first thing is, I saw her play a lot, obviously, over the last several years. I knew that just like she was really different. There's a number one player every year. There is not a JuJu every year. There is not a future Olympian top pick, that type of thing. Like I knew she was going to be kind of next level good. It was pretty quickly though, when she got here in the summer, that I was sort of like, okay, we've got something that I didn't even really imagine. it starts with her work ethic. I mean, I've told this story before, but one of our first conditioning tests in the summer, she dove across the line to meet her time. And when you have a kid that's so talented, and just doesn't take one moment for granted, I'm not going to slide by on my talent, like her work ethic, the way that she reps, the way that she practices, like that was a moment. Another moment was, we'd gone through a couple weeks of practice, and she definitely, in drills could be dominant, was dominant, or you see the skill set. But then we scrimmaged our male practice squad with officials in like a full 40-minute game. And we come out in the first, well, she ended up, I think, with 31 and 10, and I played her 23 minutes. And the first quarter, she just, it was like, okay, this is how it's going to be. I mean, these were guys, and she was just completely dominant in another level, right? Like lights go on. I mean, she's a kid who practices really hard, but lights go on, and then you see this other gear and this other level. And we were all just sort of like, even some of the other teammates were looking at me like, what are we watching right now? And then I think the consistency of that, Howard, like I have not seen something like this in terms of, she has the breakout kind of first game against Ohio State, and it's okay, now welcome to the big stage. Everyone knows how good she is. And from that point on, every game plan has been, planned around her. We've seen every coverage. We've seen every type of game in terms of style of play, officiating, and she's just weathered everything and continued to improve. So that's where I think it's so unique. We take for granted that she's going to give you 30, every night. It's crazy, right? But in addition to that, she's going to make the right basketball play, right? She's going to find, okay, this team is packing in the paint, and I'm going to find my shooters. Or this team is trapping the ball screens, and I'm going to find Rhea on the roll. Or I'm going to just get off of it in transition, or I'm going to attack in transition. She's continually evolved in real time in terms of her reads and her evolution and what she's carried, the kind of burdens that she's carried, for our team, and then the impact on winning, right? Like we finished second in arguably the toughest league in the country. She has us at a number 5 national ranking, like to elevate a program in that sense. And obviously we have really, really good pieces around her. It's not a knock on any other player, but she came into a program that didn't have these expectations, and she's elevated and impacted winning that way. I think she's elevated everybody's level of play and level of expectation. So I think that's more the story of JuJu rather than just the numbers.
It's so interesting too, when you think of role and you have a player, like you said, her assist percentage north of 26 as a freshman, as somebody who's still your primary scorer. You have somebody who is such an effective rebounder, not just for her size, but period. And as a coach, and we've seen this, right? When it's at the upper end of the basketball experience, whether it's a Brianna Stewart, whether it's a Candace Parker, the type of player who was able to do everything at both ends. It's sometimes a challenge to figure out what role she should occupy for you, right? And I just wonder sort of how you think that through, and whether you even think over the evolution of, say, this in the next 3 years, whether you expect that to change over time based around who is surrounding her.
Well, I think, she's such a complete player, right? Like she really does impact the game everywhere, right? She can rebound and go coast to coast, or start the break for us, or, we can run her as, I can post her up. We can put her in a set. She can, be the assist person. She can be the decoy, right? Like just the usage rate is so high. And then on the defensive end, I want to empower her on that end of the floor because she's really good. But at times we're like, okay, she can't guard the best player and do all this stuff, but then she finds her way to impact where she doubles, or she gets rebounds or steals or blocks. So she just, I don't think there'll be ever a time where she's not impactful on every aspect of the game. The evolution of us over the next 3 years, we'll see. I mean, I know the thing that she cares about most is winning. Right. And so as we get different types of players around her, we'll see. I just think there's nothing she can't do on the basketball floor. And so I think it'd be fun to see, just where we get to in terms of, what the best spots on the floor are. But I can put her at the point when we're facing pressure and we need that. I can put her, like I said, in the post and get a mismatch, or, we do a lot of things, with her on the wing. I try to get her in space and then just let her make the right play, because that's usually what she does.
It's a good problem to have, that's for sure, trying to figure that out. And I want to talk about what she can do for you guys in segment 3. So we're going to be right back talking more about the moment ahead, because you guys face something of a real opportunity. So right back with Lindsay Gottlieb right after this. But first, this episode of Locked On Women's Basketball is sponsored by BetterHelp. And BetterHelp gives you the opportunity to think through the things that are bothering you, the things you need to figure out. You can do it through therapy. You can do this quietly. You can do this on your own. You can do this in a way that works with your schedule. This is an opportunity to have therapy, have it virtually. Go ahead and pick a therapist today. If you need to change therapists, that'll be done at no cost to you. It is designed to be flexible and is designed to be suited to your schedule. You can even now use betterhelp.com/LockedOnNBA and get 10% off your first month. Again, that's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOnNBA. You do not have to face your challenges alone. BetterHelp. Back with Lindsay Gottlieb and talking about this team. In front of you is an opportunity, right? You have the Pac-12 conference tournament. You talk about winning 23-5. I don't think there should be a question that you guys should be hosting a pod. You know what it is to get a team to the Final Four. What does this team need to specifically do in order to fulfill that promise so that you are joining us in Cleveland?
Just even I get goosebumps a little bit kind of listening to you saying the opportunity in front of us, because it really is, right? Like this year in women's college basketball, I mean, obviously South Carolina has kind of stood alone in terms of, being the number one team all year, and credit to them because no one picked them number one to start. So they've done the work. But after that, it's, there's a handful of teams that I think have kind of been in that next group. And I think people would probably put us in that group of teams that, hey, they have a shot. So that just gives me goosebumps thinking about that. What do we need to do? I mean, obviously the March mentality, right? At this point, you have to be playing with a joy and loving being around one another. And at the same time with the urgency, knowing that it's a one and done situation. I think the best thing I can do is get our players in that space, right? Where they're not tight because of the one and done, but they understand it. And at the same time, still operating at our best. I think from a technical standpoint, we've been at our best this year when we're on the offensive end, really hard to stop because of our kind of multiple weapons, right? Like we're going to have the best player on the floor, pretty much every time out there. Like that's how good we think JuJu is. But obviously we know we're not just a one player team, and she impacts the game in so many ways. So, we have an inside presence with Rhea Marshall and Caitlin Davis. They've both been playing really well of late. And then you got to pick your poison. And then we feel like we have secondary shot making and 3-point shooting, right? Like Forbes shoots the three and Padilla shoots the three and Taylor Bigby, who's been coming off the bench, shoots the three. And so I think we're at our best when we're able to kind of take what the defense gives us, make them choose, right? Are we going to load up and put, 10 bodies, as many bodies as we can on Ju, or are we going to, pressure the ball, or are we going to sag in the paint? So we have to be able to manipulate what the defense gives us and be clicking. And then defensively, I think we can be disruptive in a lot of different ways. At this point, you know who you are, you adjust scouting report wise, but you really own your own ball screen coverages, your own schemes. And I think just getting us kind of owning who we are, and then having that right mentality, and that's where we can get hot and win several games in a row.
29th in the country from three. So nobody's going to be able to sleep on your shooters, and having the player who can lift. I've heard Gino Auriemma talk about this, that when you get to that point in the tournament, having the player who was able to elevate what you're able to do obviously has to be significant. And again, we know this, right? You talk about the opportunities in front of us. It's easy to visualize and see. I mean, again, just have to mention, top 100 players you have coming in, whether it's Kennedy Smith, whether it's Kaylee Heckel. Props to you. I know, obviously, lifelong West Coast person coming back to New York. That must have been.
It was incredible. At some point, we have to do a whole lot on that home visit, right? Like,
yes.
Not only New York, she's a Westchester kid. So that was pretty cool. a New York point guard. I sort of wanted to have a New York point guard my whole life, and here we go. But yeah, that home visit was really cool. Just like the family style dinner in New York. I felt like I was back home, so that was neat. But yes, we have an incredible class coming in. You mentioned 2 of them, but there's multiple people in the class that we feel like are really going to make an impact. So we're excited about that.
It is remarkable to see. We miss you on the East Coast, but obviously we wish you continued success out West. Lindsay Gottlieb, always appreciate your time, especially in the busiest month of March. To our listeners, I want to thank you, of course, for making us your first listen every day. We will be back with you tomorrow. The great Gigi Spear will be hosting another New York product, as a matter of fact. She'll be taking you through the Thursday show. So until then, I am Howard Megdal, wishing all of you a wonderful day.
Ogunbowale for the win.
You are Locked On Women's Basketball, your daily podcast on women's basketball.